It's time to get in the game.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Get in the Game podcast, the podcast where we explore ways to get off the sidelines, stop making excuses, and get in the game. Welcome back. I am now back from my vacation. I'm happy to say that it was everything that we expected it to be. We are fully restored and we're healthy, and we just had such a great time. So hopefully you liked it I didn't have all my equipment, didn't have all my sound gear and stuff like that, but hopefully you enjoyed last week's episode. This week, I want to talk about a little thing called passion. You may realize that today it's coming out on a Thursday instead of a Wednesday. I would say that was 100% strategic, but it wasn't. There's a lot of things that kind of happened over the last week, traveling back into the country and whatnot, that kind of delayed the launch from yesterday. However, it worked out pretty good because this is Passion Week. And for Christians, that means that we recognize the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And we recognize it this week, which coincides with Easter. It started off with Palm Sunday, the last Sunday, as Jesus comes into Jerusalem on his last week of life, and all the stuff leading up to his arrest, his public flogging, to his crucifixion, his death and burial, and then his resurrection. And you might wonder, like, okay, so what does talking about passion have to do with Passion Week? Well, in researching where the word passion actually came from, it actually came from Old Latin. And for those of you who might know how to pronounce Latin better than me, I'm sorry if I butcher this, but it comes from the old word pati, which means to suffer. Then it was translated to late Latin, which was passio, and then Old French that made it to passion, and that's where we get the word passion from. But the original term is to suffer. And so Jesus, in his last hours or last couple days from being betrayed, arrested, beaten, flogged, and then crucified, in the span of probably, I guess it wasn't a couple days, but in the span of half a day, almost a full day, he suffered through a lot of physical pain, emotional pain, leading up to his death and then his burial. So we talk about the passion. That was his passion, is to suffer for us, suffer for the sinners of the world who can't be reconciled to God because we can't pay the price of a perfect life. And so the wages of sin is death, and that's what we deserve. So Jesus came to be that payment for us. So he came to suffer and die the death that we deserve. That was his passion. And it was his mission, and his whole purpose for being here is to pay that price for us, so then we could be reconciled with God and live eternity with Jesus. And so we could have our ultimate reward. But as time has gone on, passion happens to be something that we think of a little more, maybe not so in terms of pain and suffering, but here's some of the more, the terms that we're a little more familiar with. So it is the strong and barely controllable emotion, a state or outburst of strong emotion, an intense sexual love, an intense desire or enthusiasm for something, a thing arousing enthusiasm, and then it's, in terms of the other, back to the original definition of suffering, it's the suffering and death of Jesus, a narrative of the passion from any of the Gospels. So in the Bible, you do have the story of the passion. and then it could be a musical setting of any of the narratives of the Passion. And what I mean is, when I say the Passion, it's referring to Jesus Christ. So there's all those other definitions that we're probably a little more familiar with, and I have some things, if you can see them here, that I would say that I am pretty passionate about. First off, I have my Bible, and it's not necessarily I'm passionate about this Bible, but I am passionate about my faith, and I am in my relationship with God and Jesus, and so this is kind of representative of that. I do have a little, I guess someone got this for me a while ago, a Beanie Baby kind of thing. It's a Oakland A's. Happy opening day, by the way. Today is opening day of baseball season. And I'm a passionate fan of the A's. My years as a coach, I have one of our rings that we won, one of the championship rings. This is the state championship from 2017 that we won with our boys team in volleyball. Yeah, it's there's a few more of these championship rings that, I just kind of a representative. I don't really wear them around too often. Maybe once a year at a game or something. They're pretty gaudy, but what can you expect when you're proud of something like that? And then I have some, a different ring that I'm more passionate about, and it's the one I have on my finger. This represents, obviously, my marriage to my wife. I'm very passionate about that marriage. We got married what some people nowadays would call a little bit later. And I was kind of in my, on the second half of my 30s when we got married. But I think because of that, I don't take any of that for granted. So I'm very passionate about the relationship that my wife and I have. And then there's other things, I could say the headphones, because there was a time in my life, and I would still say to a point, that I'm passionate about music. I played instruments, and I love music. I love what it can do for you. I love the conversations and the feelings that all encompass with music that you have with people. And so those are just some of the things that we have with that we would say that we're passionate about. And I would venture a guess that a lot of you out there are probably thinking that you also have things like that you're passionate about. But when we talk about getting in the game and why passion is good, is I like to kind of think about it more of the second, or the more unfamiliar version of passion that we're talking about. And so the passion refers to Jesus Christ, but the old word passion refers to suffering. And if we're going to be getting into new things and trying new things, we have to realize it's not always going to go the way that we want. We might have to bear down and grit, bite your tongue, grit your teeth, and just get through it in order to reap the benefits of the reward. I can go through these examples and just, kind of say that there are times that there is suffering in each one of these things that I'm passionate about. First off, my faith. I became a Christian at a very young age, and when I would say I think it was around 7 years old, and then at that age, you start to think that everything's going to be great. Like, hey, I'm saved. I'm a Christian. Things are going to go right from here on out. But then I experienced there was a year, I remember, I want to believe it was first or second grade, where I had three grandparents, two great grandparents, and my grandmother, who all passed away. Within like 6 to 9 months of each other. And at a young age, I didn't understand that. Like, these are people that we loved, people that we talked to, and we did holidays with, and that emotion that I felt just it didn't equate with the way I thought things were supposed to go. That it was going to be all happy and everything was going to be great from then on out. And that's just real young. But then later, I had the husband of my grandmother, my grandfather. He passed away, and that was in 6th grade, and that emotion wrecked me. And I've never been one to shy away from my emotions. So it was one of those things when I feel a loss, like I feel it. I I express it. I don't have a problem with it. I'm very secure in who I am. But that emotion is real. And then there's things that happen in life that are maybe a little more personal, and not, not the death of a family member isn't personal, but maybe it's just something that is specifically to me, times where I messed up, times where I sinned, and I realized, like, God, why am I falling away from you right now? Or why am I not getting this particular realm of curriculum the way that my older brothers may have got it? And not to say that I'm not don't have my own intelligence in some ways, but I being the fourth of five boys, you get compared to, whether you want it or not, to your other brothers. And nothing against them, because most of it is actually self comparison. Like I'm comparing myself to them, and I'm wondering, how come they get it and I don't? How come stuff like this came so easy to them and I didn't? And not that that's any of those things are overwhelmingly suffering, but you get in your head and you start thinking, God, why would you let me go through this and experience this when I think I'm supposed to be happy and better, and everything's supposed to be sunshine and roses, as they say. Well, as I get older and more mature, I realize that that's not going to happen. God doesn't tell us that we're not going to have suffering and ordeals on this side of eternity. He doesn't say that we're always going to be happy, but he does say that if we have him in his life, we will have joy and peace with things. And so it's taken me a long time over my life to realize that when things don't always go my way, and it might be a spiritual battle, it's for the betterment of me, for the growing and teaching and the spiritual strength that I'm gaining. It's for my good, as long as I keep that faith on the forefront. So suffering through life to build faith, the reward is there through it and at the end of it. It's not the reward of suffering for faith isn't at the beginning. It's through the process and at the end. When it comes to being an A's fan, I've been an A's fan since they were really good in the 80s. My favorite player back then was Jose Canseco. And so from early on, 80, 86, 87, times when they were really good. And then they got in the World Series, 88, 89, and 90. 88, they lost to the Dodgers. 89, they beat the Giants in the famous Earthquake World Series, that series. And then in 1990, they lost to the Reds. But so they were on TV a lot. They got a lot of accolades, and it was a great time to be an A's fan at that time. But then here it is. They've gone through a long drought. Not that they haven't been a decent team and haven't made playoffs, but you suffer through those years where they're not so good, or you wonder how come that the ownership won't just pony up the dough to get the big players and put people in place to where we can be in the World Series again. And I say we as in them. I don't like to equate myself as part of the team, but why can't they get the team into the World Series again and be competitive and get to that point when you see the big name teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Red Sox and all these teams spending hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars on people. Like you feel like you suffer through it as a fan. But the reward, if they get to the playoffs or if they get to the World Series, is there for you. You suffer through it. You have that passion that this is my team and I'm not giving up on it. And so you suffer through those bad years to hopefully reap the reward of the good years. And then the ring, this ring right here, this is a 2017, like I said, state championship ring. I started coaching in 2001. That was the year after I graduated high school. I had as a member of the team, my senior year, we had a really good team, and I thought that we were the best team in the Valley. I thought we were going to win it all, and it just didn't work out that way. But the next year, which I had a lot of my ex-teammates on it because they were a year or two younger than me, that team, to this day, is one of the best teams that I've ever had the pleasure of coaching. And I was just an assistant coach, so I wasn't the head coach or anything. But they they won the championship of our region that way. And then a few years later in 05 and 06, we had back-to-back championships. And then I was continuing to coach, and so we had a long drought of championships from 06 to 2013. And I wasn't actually even a coach in 2013, but there are teams and there are weeks and there are practices and stuff that you suffer through, and there are things that are outside the court and outside practices that you suffer through to get to the point where you put yourself in the place that you can win a championship, into the position that you can succeed in athleticism. And I have to be honest, there are teams out there that it literally was just you have to suffer through the year. This is the team we have. Maybe they're not as talented, but they're great kids, and so you kind of suffer a lot of losses. Sometimes they're really talented and they're not the greatest kids, and you suffer with attitudes. And sometimes it's a mixture of all these things or stuff completely different, and you suffer through it because as a coach, you aren't going to give up on them. You're going to suffer through, because at the end of it, even if they aren't successful in terms of wins and losses, the goal is to make them successful afterwards. And the goal is and the reward is to watch them move on, graduate, and take some of the things that you taught them, hopefully in life and not just in sport, and apply it to their lives and move on with that. And so, as a coach, that's where that suffering comes in. And there's a lot of other things outside of it. The time you give, it's definitely not, especially in my experience as a walk-on coach for a high school, it's not about money for sure. The time you put in, you get by the time you calculate it all, you get less than $1 an hour. I think my first year coaching, I think I calculated it, and it was about 75 cents an hour by the time I put in it. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, because it was the best experience to me. You suffer through that time. You suffer through the lack of money in order for the reward to happen. And that year we were lucky enough to celebrate with a championship at the end of it. And so that's just what you do as a coach. It's the suffering you go through. In music, you suffer through the practices. You suffer through the moments of thinking you're not good enough, and the recitals you might not have always performed the best at, or the late nights studying the theory on the piano that you just don't understand. You're just you're memorizing it and you're getting it right, but you don't really understand it. You suffer through all that, and you put the hours in and the work in. Little by little, you start to see it build upon each other, and then it clicks one day, and you know what you're reading in terms of the notes on the page, and you know what certain keys mean, or how to change chords, or what a major key and a minor key are. And these are things, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sorry, but we get to that point and we realize that all that suffering that I did for it, all the times I felt like giving up, but I didn't, have resulted in me now knowing what I'm doing. And then I could go into marriage. I haven't been married that long, but I'm not really going to go to. For those of you who are married, there are hard times, there are good times, and everything you go through, and I would never call it suffering by any means. So don't quote me on that. But what I mean is, you're going to go through times that are great, and you're going to go through times that aren't so great. But because you've made a commitment to that other person, you're going to go through it together, and you're going to come out on the other side. And if you hold on to that commitment, the reward over time is better than anything. And that's just in my short 2.5 years of marriage that I've been in. I've realized that in times of whether I had a job or didn't have a job, or health, sickness, health. I mean, it really is. We've gone through maybe not any of the recent health scares, but we had different sicknesses and different ailments like that. And when you suffer through those together and you work with each other and you're committed to each other, the reward comes out of it. And you're thankful for it and you're grateful for it. So I all the things that I have out here that I've used as examples, I am grateful for and I'm happy for. happy for all the sufferings, all the years I had to wait the people I thought were right for me that I was going to marry. I'm glad I suffered through all those relationships because I'm exactly where I need to be with my wife. And so I'm grateful. I thank God for all those things. So when we think about starting something new, we have to realize that true passion is going to be part of it. If we're willing to commit to it and stay the course, we are going to suffer because we know the reward. Just as Jesus suffered the beating, the flogging, and when I mean flogging, he took 40 lashes from a cat of nine tails. And a cat of nine tails is basically, it's a whip with 9 leather straps coming off of it, and at each end of those straps had a little shard of bone or glass that was sharp, that when you hit it, it ripped and tore. It tore the skin open. He took 40 lashes of those before he was then taken off, because he was, I mean, the movie shows that he was like bound around a log, but after that was done, he was taken. He was then made to carry his own cross to the point, basically carry the own instrument of his death to the spot where he's going to be crucified for us. Then they nailed his hands to a cross. And, there's debate about whether or not he was nailed through the palm or the hand, maybe more the wrist area. And they considered that part of the hand. But nevertheless, he was nailed to that. And then his feet were placed upon each other and then nailed together there. So it was painful. And then he was on the cross for 6 hours suffering. Hands stretched out wide, legs, bent. So you could, the only way to breathe is to push up on those feet that the nails have been, driven into. And there's pain at every single breath. And it was meant to be cruel. It was meant to make an example out of, these are the people who, if you stand against Rome, this is what we're going to do to you. And it was the most brutal way that you could be killed at that time. And he took that on for us. He suffered because he knew the reward for those who believe in him and accept him and know that he not only died for us, but then he was buried. And then on the third day, he rose from the dead. For those who believe that, confess with their mouth and believe in their heart that he is Lord, that he will save them. And then that's the reward. We get to spend eternity with him. It's not just eternity in heaven. Our prize is Jesus. We get to be there because Jesus is everything. So that, I hope and I pray that no one ever has to go through that type of passion for anyone else. But those of you with kids know that you would give your life for them. Those of you who have a spouse know that you would do anything you can in your power to save them, to give your life, to take the place of them. Well, that's what Jesus did for us. We deserve death because of our sins, because we're not perfect, and heaven demands perfection. So Jesus came, lived a perfect life, and paid the price that we could never pay. And if we accept that and we take that and believe it in our heart, and then we put it to practice, repent from our sins, and then live that sort of passion, maybe that passion we're more familiar with, that passion for Jesus, if we have it for Jesus, then we will spend eternity with him in his glory. And he promises to share his glory with us. And that, to me, that's a wonderful promise. So when we're thinking about getting in the game, that's what Jesus did. He not only got in the game and did it for a while, but he gave us the ability to have those same sort of feelings for others, to suffer along people who are grieving, to suffer through work, suffer through pain in order for the grand reward. So not only do I urge you to explore what the passion of the Christ really is, but also explore what the passion it is for whatever you want to get into. When it means getting in the game, you are going to have to suffer through things because you're not always going to be perfect at it. It's not always going to come easy. but I know it's possible. Sticking with it, staying the course, you can make it happen. I love you guys. Have a great Easter. I'm praying for all of you. Let's get off the sidelines, stop making excuses, and get in the game. We'll see you next week.
Get in the game! Thank you for listening to the Get in the Game podcast. Please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. That's the best way to support us. Find us on YouTube and subscribe for more content. If you would like for us to pray for you, or if you have topics that you would like us to tackle in upcoming episodes, email us at getinthegamepodcast@gmail.com. That's getinthegamepodcast@gmail.com. Or hit us up on Twitter and Instagram at getinthegamepc. If you've experienced getting off the sidelines and getting into the game yourself, please let us know. And remember, it's time to get in the game.